find Finnish films, a folk band and a Foley artist. Well, currently, the Barbican, since as part of their Finland independence season, they're showing a selection of Finnish films, including their double bill of Romu-Mattila and The Beautiful Lady, and The Moonshiners, which I was lucky enough to see. It's fair to say that this event is quite niche. Silent black and white Finnish movies with a Foley artist and a folk band is definitely not for everyone. But what made it so special was that the two films, both directed by Juho Kuusmanen, were presented to you in the way that he always intended them to be shown, with a live band and with the sounds being produced live on stage at the same time. And that's something that you never normally see and is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I should also mention that a Foley artist is someone who creates all the noises you hear in movies, from raindrops to footsteps, as you can see my attempt here. Having Kuusmanen there to introduce and answer questions about his films was something I really appreciated, especially since he wasn't very formal. At one point, when the first film was about to be projected onto the screen, it had to be shrunk down to fit the right ratio, and you could just hear Kuusmanen from the front row shouting, "It's a very small film." The first film, Romu-Mattila and The Beautiful Lady, follows the real-life story of an elderly man who is evicted from his home and has to sell his possessions in order to survive. At 30 minutes in length, I never expected to be as moved as I was by this film. It perfectly balances gloom and grief and humour. I definitely think this was aided by the orchestra. The wandering and mournful notes of the accordion mimicked the wandering nature and mourning of the old man. The whole film makes you feel really cold, and that is the highest compliment because that's what it's trying to do. It puts you in the place of the old man who is now without hope and without home. I think what stood out for me about this film was the way it presented a community. It showed its kindness and its cruelty. And it's these juxtapositions which I think are really interesting and represent the real world. But it doesn't end so pessimistically that it doesn't provide some hope for the old man. The Beautiful Lady plays a large role in this, and it nicely fades to white before fading to black. The fact that Romu-Mattila and The Beautiful Lady, as well as The Moonshiners, are silent helps break down the language barrier before it's even built. However, there is one moment in Romu-Mattila when the live band perform in sync to the band on the screen, and the lyrics to this are not translated with subtitles, and there is a sense of loss there, especially since Kuusmanen afterwards told us that the lyrics were really beautiful but didn't expand to what they meant or what they were trying to say. The Moonshiners follows a brother, a sister and their pig as they make moonshine and try to escape a number of farcical situations. It's hard to talk about this film because there isn't a moral, there aren't themes or symbols. It's simply intended to entertain. And I think nowadays we can forget that that's a perfectly valid reason for creating art. And that's what this film does incredibly well. It's farcical and funny. The orchestra play a very upbeat tune throughout, reminding you of Charlie Chaplin. Modern comedies very rarely use slapstick or farce, and I think that's one of the reasons why this film works so well. The Moonshiners makes you feel incredibly warm. That pure sense of comedy overwhelms everything else and just fills you with nostalgia and joy. My only real criticism for this was that there were a few dodgy subtitles which threw you, but not so far that you couldn't understand what was happening or keep up with the plot. Going to see something you would not normally see is so important, and what Barbican does incredibly well. And I really would recommend that if you had the opportunity to do this, to see a Foley artist performing live and a folk band and a Finnish film, do it, because you're not going to regret it.